Next time you're trying to self-diagnose yourself with some kind of mental illness, you know, it might just so happen to be something like what they say at the vet when I bring Sadie to the vet. If something's wrong with your dog, it's one of three things. It's either her diet, or her diet. And now I'm starting to think, after some experimentation, that perhaps it is the same for humans too. Maybe it's one of three things. Maybe it's not bipolar or, you know, personality disorder, any of that shit. Maybe it's just your diet or your diet or your diet. Because, you know, I've done just about every horrible substance known to man. And yet you give me a bag of chocolate chip cookies and it ruins my life. More so than any other fucking substance I've ever ingested. And so, just want you to put it into consideration when it comes to psychology. The word normal is about 100 years old. Only 100 years old. And it's like music. Say, this note. Or this note. Which one of those notes is normal? Is it this note? Nope. Is it this one? Is it this one? Is it that one? Is it this one? Which note is normal? None of them. They're all just notes. There you go. That's next time you're thinking about your think about it like that. You're just made of notes. It's just notes. It's just notes. It's just music. It's not. I don't need to take it personally. It's not my fault. Except in that, it is my fault in that I'm responsible for what I put into my body. So yeah, in that way, you know, I'm responsible for what I put into my body. Therefore, but I don't need to look at it like, you know, some like fucking horrible condition that, you know, is gonna follow me around forever or ruin my life. You know, somebody needs more liquid in their lighter. Okay. Well, yeah, I remember how last week when I woke up and I was feeling suicidal as soon as I woke up. All of a sudden it occurred to me that I hadn't been taking my vitamins, my vitamin D and my B12 and my L-tyrosine and my melatonin and stuff, and my magnesium. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me that I could have felt that way because I didn't have my vitamins. Because I didn't take my vitamins. Wow. It just kind of reframes the whole, like, what you put into your body, you know, kind of thing, because, like, a chocolate chip cookie will ruin my life. A chocolate chip cookie will send me on the worst downward spiral, and yet, like, I've done, like, every drug known to man, and yet... a chocolate chip cookie. And I want to fucking die. Yeah, so all I had to do was take vitamins. And then I woke up today and I was like, oh, I feel like myself again. Because I took my vitamins yesterday. Oh my God. It's like that. Okay, so, you know, just be kind to yourself. Even if you can never find the camera angle that doesn't make you look as old as you really are. And show off this wonderful tooth that's all fucked up from when it came out of my head. You know, when it came out of my head twice. The first one was fucked up. And then, oh no, the first one was okay, but the second one that came out when I was older was all fucked up. And, you know, figured out why finally on a journey one night. Because because I went back into the memory, because I asked my tooth, your body has all the memories that you've ever experienced. Whether or not you want to remember them, everything you've ever experienced is held and recorded by your body, which, you know, of course, since you're made mostly of water, of course, water has memory. So, right. So, I was asking my body, so why does that tooth always been that color ever since it came out of my head? And then it showed me I was on the bed. I was maybe 3 months old or something like that, super young, in Germany next to my mom, and she was just having a real bad day. I think she was having postpartum or something, you know. Plus, I look like my dad, and I think whatever resentment she had towards him, she was taking it out on me because I look like him. And so she just like looked over at me, like going, "Hold me, mommy, I'm a baby. Hold me. Why are you ignoring me?" And she just shoved me off the bed onto the floor, and it fell on my face. And it chipped off the enamel on my tooth inside, the tooth behind the tooth. So the first tooth, because, you know, if you see a baby skull, they've got two sets of, it's so cool looking. You see a baby skull, you got two sets of teeth, because you got the teeth that are going to come out after the first teeth, like sharks. And so, yeah, so it fucked up my tooth. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, just be careful with what you do to yourself and what you put in your body when you're thinking it's all your fault. You feel real shitty about yourself or whatever. You know, sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes it's not even about you. Sometimes it's just some bullshit somebody projected onto you because of some fucking bullshit that has absolutely nothing to do with you. So don't take it personally. And you can, instead of just letting it go, because I know sometimes that's really hard for people, especially people whose best friends most of their lives have been the depression and the pain and the sadness. Because for a long time I was like, oh my God, I think I'm addicted to pain. Like, I love pain. Maybe I just love pain. Maybe that's why it's so hard for me to let it go or whatever, right? And then I was like, well, it could be because it was my best friend forever. I always knew I could rely on it and never would leave me, you know. It wouldn't disappear every couple of years like all my friends, because every time we moved I had to make new friends. It was annoying. So, you know, that's why I'm not very good at anyway. So yeah, the pain and the sadness and the loneliness was my best friend. So that's why I couldn't let it go, it would seem. And then all of a sudden, when I kind of made peace with that fact that, you know, I was comfortable, it was my comfort zone, was being depressed and sad, suicidal. When I realized that was my comfort zone, it was easier to kind of see why it was my comfort zone and not blame myself for it. Just be like, oh, well, it was a coping mechanism. Like most, you know, aspects of ourselves that make up our personality, most of those are just coping mechanisms. Like when I first got off drugs and I was sitting in the woods by myself with no internet or anything, just in my truck, all by myself before I found Sadie. You know, sitting there staring at the fire in the woods, freezing to death, with living on $3 a day for a really long time, doing all my shadow work. You know, at one point, you know, I kept like coming up to these like little like mannerisms or, you know, things that I would do or say all the time. You know, living my life as a, you know, fully high functioning drug addict with 3 jobs, you know, or whatever, and paying rent every month on time. And yeah, I'd come up against these mannerisms when I was like totally in the middle of the woods by myself and not on anything. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that's just part of my personality. Maybe it, you know, because I was blaming all kinds of shit on drugs. I always thought everything I did was because of the drugs. You know, blaming the drugs. When the drugs were actually, all the drugs were doing was getting me out of bed and going to work. It was like putting me in some kind of free state long enough where I would like not take it, not get emotionally involved with the factor, or as dysregulated with the fact that I was dealing with a bunch of bullshit at work or getting sexually harassed at every single one of my 48 jobs ever, or whatever. It doesn't happen now so much anymore because I'm old. But yeah, that's great. And so that's how I dealt. It was like I just had to be like, I had to be wearing like the buffer zone between me and the rest of the world in order to function in the world as a completely dysregulated human being, which a lot of us are. And then I had coffee this morning, see, Kate still. And then I thought, well, if that's just part of my personality, then all this time I've been blaming shit on drugs when it wasn't even the drugs' fault. And then I was like, well, maybe drugs were my best friend. Maybe I always loved drugs more than I loved any man I was ever with. That's a good possibility since I left the room most of the time I was fucking him, but, you know, or somebody else took over. Anyway, you know, the point I was trying to make is, yeah. What's normal? B flat, G, A sharp, A sharp or B flat, Which one of those is the normal note? So yeah, be kind to yourself. You gotta give yourself a little credit. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay, because you're still here. You're still living, you know. You're not hurting anybody. You're not hurting anybody. You're you know, dealing with each little facet of the trauma as it gets unpuzzled, as you're taking your own puzzle pieces apart, you know, and then reframing and rewiring and reprogramming yourself into this you know, a better way of being conscious, like present, because the next moment or the last moment is no more important than this moment. Just like, which moment is normal? The last one, the next one, or this one? Yeah. So it's a lot of constructs of the mind. It's kind of fascinating, really. Constructs of the mind. Yeah. I mean, damn. That's why I loved that whole process of just noticing my thoughts when I would be at work, like right before I gave it all up, you know. And there were all these crows all of a sudden were following me everywhere, and that was cool. But the one thing that really seemed to all of a sudden strike a note with me was after because I had just started meditating on a regular basis. And one of the practices that I was doing was to have non-aggressive thoughts. And it was at that point, noticing my thoughts all day long at work, that I was like, oh my God, like how often I was like just aggressive in my thoughts, mostly towards myself, believe it or not. I thought I would be more towards other people and men, especially because I have very like gender dysmorphia thing going on there. Everybody hates me because I'm a woman. But that just turned out to be ancestral trauma, because, you know, it was from my mom to her mom to her mom to her mom before her, for 7 generations of women telling each other, your job in life is to please men, and you're worth nothing, you're a second-class citizen, you're not allowed to do anything on your own, the only reason you're here is to breed. you're just like a farm animal. Like, you have less rights than anybody. Don't start having thoughts above your station and shit like that, right? So, you know, it was just such a deeply ingrained shame of being female, that I didn't even realize it until I was halfway through reading that book, The First Sex, which the whole first chapter was all about how every man starts as a female in the womb. Yeah, we all start out as XX when we're in the womb. And then later on, males turn into XY, and that in the beginning of discovering that, it was always considered, at least according to this woman who was studying ancient civilizations, that men were considered malformed women, and that's why they were treated so shittily in the, you know, eons before Christianity ever happened. And it's kind of what brought Christianity about, because men were so pissed off about being treated as second-class citizens that they slowly took over. Yeah, and started dressing like women and wearing fake boobs and having fake menstruations and wearing long robes and growing their hair long and taking over all the priestesses and oracles roles, because they wanted to be in touch with you know, the witchy woo side of life too, but they didn't really quite have the same connection to it, so they just decided to imitate women. And that's why you see priests now are still wearing robes, because that's all that's left of that whole process of taking women out of any position of power and putting themselves in it. So, you know, if they struggle pretty hard and not wanting to let go, then that's why you know why. Because physically we were also more alike back then. You know, one wasn't bigger than the other. In fact, women actually sort of fucked ourselves over in the end of that civilization by choosing to procreate with men that were a little bit more testosterone-y, you know, and as a process, because so many women started doing that, the men became bigger and bigger and bigger, more muscular, and then at that point they invented swords, weapons, and fences and war. Because before that there were no weapons, there were no fences, and there was no war. So there you go. Good to know. Okay. Facts.
And now I take Sadie out. Okay, we got outside now. Okay. All right. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.
Which note is normal? Which note is normal? None of them.